Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. As always, I'm your host, the Game Master, and yesterday was part one in our series about the crime syndicate of America, specifically Johnny Quick, Owlman, Power Ring, Superwoman, and Ultraman, who beat the Justice League, just like they did in the comics, then took them back to the negative universe where the Justice League awaits rescue. Then the CSA decided to go to back to Earth K again, but this time go fight with the other superpower on the planet in 1964, which was the Soviet Union, right? And they had their own team of Justice League level supers. And in that fight, the crime syndicate actually lost. So now the surviving members of the syndicate are trying to figure out what their next move is. But before we get into that, smash that like button. Check to see if you're still subscribed because YouTube does unsubscribe people sometimes. Ring the bell so that you know when we upload stuff, and leave us a comment, partially because it helps out with the YouTube algorithm, but also because we love hearing from you guys. We've got a great community here, and it's all thanks to you. Thank you so much for being here. So let's dive in. The prologue to this one takes place in 1964 in the negative universe, where their president is a World War II hero named Slade Wilson. He is speaking at a televised funeral for Johnny Quick and Owlman. On Earth K, Johnny Quick was killed by Perun, who was basically, he's from Russian mythology. He's basically their version of Thor. And Owlman was beaten to death by a character called Mother Russia, who is sort of the Russians' answer to an old DC character named Uncle Sam. So the original Power Ring and Ultraman were both knocked out during that fight. And Ultraman woke up, and having never been defeated ever and overcome with rage, he killed Power Ring. So the Ring of Volthoom chose a new man named John Stewart to be its next host. Talon, aka Richard Grayson, who was the sidekick of the original Owlman, takes over and becomes the new Owlman. He's been fighting crime, or not fighting crime. He's just been fighting alongside the crime syndicate since the early 1940s. So in their eyes, Talon earned his place amongst their ranks. Speaking, by the way, of the 1940s, when the evil Diana of this world left her version of the island of Themyscira and journeyed to America, she encountered a woman there named Lois Lane and stole her identity. For those who don't know, in DC Comics in the Golden Age, when Wonder Woman came to America, she encountered a nurse named Diana Prince and didn't steal her identity, but kind of told, because Diana Prince had a lover she was crying over, and so Wonder Woman basically said go to him, which involved Diana Prince leaving the country, and then Wonder Woman assumed her identity. So that's kind of what we're doing a riff of there. The other thing there is that the Superwoman of Earth 3, that's like Wonder Woman's evil counterpart or whatever you want to call her. Over the years, sometimes she's called Diana, sometimes she's called Lois. Um, so that was also us trying to reconcile all of that, you know, chaotic mess. At any rate, you get the idea. So the point is, the real Lois went into hiding where she met a hero named Alexander Luthor, right? And they fell in love and were married. Meanwhile, Luthor's sister married Ultraman, who's like the evil version of Superman, right? So now in 1964, Ultraman has a half human son named Luthor L, aka Ultra Boy. And he hears about Johnny Quick dying and asks about the opening on the team. But here's the thing, Ultraman hates his son because, again, he's the opposite of Superman, right? So he hates his son because he is half human. And so he sees him as weak, right? And throughout the game, we have Ultraman just saying all sorts of hateful stuff to Ultra Boy, like he calls him a useless half breed, and we we make him as abusive as possible, and we make um you get the idea, right? We just make him as big of a jerk as we can. And then another thing Ultraman does is he beats his cousin, who is Kara, aka Ultra Girl, and she, of course, is the counterpart to Superman's cousin, Supergirl, right? Who's also named Kara. At any rate, so Ultraman tells Ultra Girl and Ultra Boy to quote unquote go try to be useful for a change and go find him some kryptonite, because whereas kryptonite weakens Superman, of course, in this backwards world, kryptonite actually, every time Ultraman encounters it, he gets another random superpower, which we roll on a table for. Um, Basically, we list all the powers in the book that he doesn't have and number them, like 1 through 100 or whatever, and then you roll a 100-sided dice, and whatever you roll up, that's what he has now, right? So at any rate, um, Ultraman wants to power up. He wants to go back to Earth K, which is our normal game world setting, and he wants to kill Mother Russia for humiliating. So there's another character named Speed Zone, and his secret identity is Wally West. So he is the counterpart to Kid Flash in the normal uh, universe, right? So he asks to take the place of Johnny Quick, who died. And then Johnny Quick was the counterpart of the Flash. So just as Kid Flash is the sidekick of the Flash, Speed Zone was the sidekick of Johnny Quick. So he feels like he's entitled to that position, right? But Ultraman tells Wally that he has to prove himself if he wants a place on the team. And they kind of refer to Talon, who is the counterpart of Robin, basically saying he's been doing this stuff for like, I don't know, 20 or 25 years or something now, right? So therefore he earned it. Meanwhile, Ultra Girl, who, by the way, we went out of our way to, again, to just showcase what a jerk Ultraman is. We gave Ultra Girl like a black eye and a bloody nose and just all sorts of stuff, right? And this is setting up where she's at also in terms of her motivation. Okay. So she asks Ultra Boy if he would mind if they split up, and then he could fly around this world and find all of the kryptonite he can here to give to Ultraman, because Ultraman basically wants all the superpowers, right? He wants, at the end of the day, he basically wants to be all powerful. Um, but then she says, well, while you basically take all the kryptonite from this world, I'll go over to Earth K, to the counterpart world, and I'll steal all of their kryptonite. And Ultra Boy is like, whatever, because he's just upset about how he's been treated, right? Being called all these horrible names and stuff like that. So he leaves angry, right? And then Kara goes to the new Power Ring, who's John Stewart, and asks him to open a portal to Earth K so that she can go there and steal all their kryptonite. So the new Power Ring does as she asks, not suspecting that the real reason she is trying to go to Earth K is she wants to defect. So, which this is something we did, by the way, as a brief aside, is I pulled in parallels actually between this other world and the Soviet Union, but at any rate, I don't want to be too heavy-handed. But yeah, that's her thing. She wants to get away from her world. And that brings us to the main plot of today's game, which also takes place in 1964 in the negative universe. So there's a character called the Martian, aka Jed Jarkus, and he brings Ultraman some kryptonite. It's almost like in certain fantasy stories where people are lining up to bring a medieval king some kind of treasure. You know what I mean? That's basically what this is Ultraman now has everybody in his world bringing him stuff. And so Jed actually has 4 arms. Um, so he's carrying these like kryptonite boulders and he brings them to Ultraman. And then every time Ultraman touches one, um, he's getting a new random power. And then Superwoman, which I feel like they never should have named her that, but because that's confusing, right? But the evil character called Superwoman is the counterpart to Wonder Woman, right? Maybe I should call her Diana. I don't know. But at any rate, she has this group called the Made Men because she's kind of like the main members of the crime syndicate. They each one of them, they're kind of like a godfather kind of a figure or something where they have people then that work under them, where they have kind of their own separate crime families or however you want to look at that. But at any rate, so her characters who are subordinate to her are counterparts to the Shazam characters. So it's like Uncle Super, Mary Super, Captain Super, Captain Super Junior. You get the idea, right? So they all are bringing Ultraman more kryptonite. They had scoured the world using the speed of Mercury, and they got all the kryptonite they could find. And then there's another character um, named Donna Troy, and she goes by Supergirl quite a bit, which again is just super confusing, right? No pun intended. So then she also goes by Olympia, and I feel like that's kind of the better route to go to avoid the confusion. But she does the same thing. She brings in kryptonite. In fact, there's just a ton of more supers bringing in kryptonite. So there's like Anataz, who is the reverse Zatanna. So she's a stage magician who wears like a white top hat. And then whereas Zatanna has like long sleeves, but then she wears like fishnet pantyhose or whatever you want to call it. Anataz, they kind of reverse that in the comics where she's wearing like dress pants, but then she has sort of like opera gloves kind of a thing, but it's the fishnet material instead of the normal stuff. She's got like a little bow tie. You get the idea. But she has like a black dress shirt, but then everything else is white. So it's again just that reverse idea of Zatanna. Um Tomiko is their version of Ray Palmer, who was a guinea pig at Star Labs. Barracuda, the Sea King, is their version of Aquaman. The Black Beetle is Ted Cord. Black Siren is their version of Black Canary. Deadeye is their version of Oliver Queen. He actually goes by a bunch of names, but we used Deadeye. Dr. Chaos aka Enza Nelson, is the counterpart to Dr. Fate. Elastaman is Ralph Dibny. Katar, the Deathbringer of Thanagar, is their version of Hawkman. Shaira the Valkyrie is their version of Hawk Girl. And then there's Transmutato. Transmutato. I don't know. You say Transmutato, I say Transmutato. At any rate, the Fiendish Freak. So this is the counterpart of Rex Mason, aka Metamorpho, right? And so, like I said, all these characters are bringing in kryptonite. So when he gives kryptonite to Ultraman, Ultraman's like, "Hey, Fugly, what's your name?" And so Rex tells him, and Ultraman says, "That's a stupid name. From now on, your new name is Element Man." And it was a part of the game I liked because, again, it just shows what a prick Ultraman is. But I kind of like the idea that things are so bad that he's even telling you what name to go by. You know what I mean? Like if you think about like real world dystopias and stuff, they don't usually take it that far, but he does. So I thought that part was sort of interesting. Another thing that was kind of interesting, you ever see a mafia movie where like the guy who's in power talks to someone who has significantly less sort of social power, right? And they give him that sort of slap on the cheek, right? It's not like a huge slap. It's just kind of like a, good boy, do as you're told kind of a slap, right? We did that, but we played up the idea that whereas Superman has tried so hard to pull his punches, you know what I mean? Because he cares about people. Um, Ultraman hasn't. So Ultraman is just like really destructive in sort of like day-to-day life stuff. So when he gives him a couple little slaps, uh the reverse metamorpho actually took damage from it. Um so then Barracuda, the Sea King, says that he heard from a little fish that there might be an opening on the team. But Ultraman says that he's lucky that Ultraman lets him keep Atlantis. So Barracuda kind of like grovels and bows deeply and submits and thanks him for his mercy. Meanwhile, as all this is going on, with the bad guys at the North Pole, a submarine surfaces under the command of Captain David Hyde, who is the heroic counterpart of Black Manta. His services were procured by Alexander Luthor. The sub's cargo bay, which, if you want to imagine what it looks like, think of like the 80s space shuttle, right? Where it's kind of the cargo bay doors are like split down the middle, so they're rounded and they open up. And so inside the cargo bay was this gigantic robot, like the size of a sentinel, basically. And it stands up and it looks like there was a huge bipedal robot in DC Comics at one point that was an homage to composite Superman, where it was like split down the middle, so half of it looked like Superman and half of it looked like Batman. We did an homage to that, but it's like composite Ultraman, so that half of this robot looks like Ultraman and the other half looks like Batman. And at any rate, so it's piloted by Winslow Schott, who is the negative universe version of Toyman. So the robot trudges over through the snow and stuff to where there's this gigantic key to Ultraman's fortress. And the robot tries to pick up the key because they're trying to get into the fortress for some reason. And it can't do it. We roll dice and it's a bad roll of the dice. So the robot not only fails, but it's like damaging its sort of like shoulder joints and stuff trying to pick this thing up. So Alexander Luthor, Captain Hyde, Doris Zool, Jonathan Crane, Edward Nashton, Officer Leonard Snark, Priscilla Rich, and Winslow Schott discuss um, what they should be doing, right? And so they decide They've just been here too long. Even though they all they did was show up and try to lift a key. They're like, that's too much. And it shows the level of paranoia in this world. It shows how everybody's just living in fear and how awful everything is. You know what I mean? So these guys run away, and the secret rebellion, which is what they are, decides they'll have to find another way into the fortress later. So, meanwhile, on Earth K, Ultra Girl, aka the negative Kara Zor-El, right, who's beat and battered and all that stuff, um, flies to Metropolis where she runs into Supergirl, her heroic counterpart from the positive universe. Supergirl sort of assumes that this is going to be like a Kryptonian cat fight, but instead, Ultra Girl explains that she wants to defect because her cousin's a psychopath and no place is safe from his wrath. Supergirl says Superman could keep Ultra Girl safe, but Ultra Girl informs her that he can't do that because he's been taken captive by the Prime Syndicate. So Supergirl says, well, we have another Superman. Like, we've got a spare laying around, basically. So Supergirl and Ultra Girl then fly to the other Fortress of Solitude that's in a volcano on a tropical island. And here they find Superman Red. This is his fortress, right? When we set that up kind of forever ago, I don't know how many videos ago that's been, but there are two Supermen, there are two fortresses, and Superman Red, like, to put this in Ninja Turtles terms almost, uh the normal Superman Clark Kent is more like Leonardo, where he is very good pretty much across the board, right? Superman Red tends to be more a little like Raph, where he's got more of a temper and kind of does some stuff he shouldn't be doing. And so that's sort of the dynamic there. At any rate, so Superman Red is right now trying to repair this gadget that uses the energy absorption power. And the idea is that it uses the heat energy from the volcano as the power source that fuels everything on the island. At any rate, so Supergirl has met Superman Red before. Superman Red, by the way, I got a question in the comments section recently. He's not at all related to like Clark Kent, right? He's not like a clone or anything like that. Superman Red is an alien from a completely different part of space, okay? But at any rate, so um Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, met Superboy Red back when he was Superboy and not Superman, because they were both in the Legion of Superheroes together. And they were actually kind of like childhood sweethearts. So because of that, right, Supergirl's exposure to Red in the past means that his Valentino effect no longer has any effect on her at all, right? Ultra Girl, conversely, has never met a Superman Red before. So I thought that was interesting. We established that in the other universe, there is no like Ultraman Red. You know what I mean? If he's there, that's not the role he plays there. So because she's never met him before, um, she strongly responds to the Valentino effect, right? Um, so she's really into him. And how do I want to put this? Even though she wants to defect, even though she's kind of wanting to become more heroic and less villainous, right? She still is what we might call like the bad girl archetype, as opposed to Supergirl, who, especially in the Silver Age, is very much the good girl archetype. You know what I mean? So there's this moment in the game then where you get this like almost like a Betty and Veronica kind of a vibe, if you know what I mean. And so when Ultra Girl hits on Red, Supergirl finds herself getting a bit jealous. And I thought that was an interesting turn of events because she had kind of lost interest in him in a way, and now that's coming back. So Supergirl puts her personal feelings aside for a moment and tells Superman Red that Superman Blue and the rest of the Justice League are Ultraman's prisoners, and that he's stockpiling kryptonite, growing more and more powerful with each passing moment. Um, so how do I want to put this? Superman Red basically says, um, that maybe they could get help from his counterpart, right? And Ultra Girl says, she kind of repeats this idea of like, I don't think you have a counterpart in our world. And so Superman Red explains that's not actually what he meant. So he tells her that at the end of World War II, there was this mishap with a duplicator ray, and that he has several counterparts right here on Earth K, and one of them calls himself the Red King, and that he's also kind of been stockpiling power too, and that according to Superman Red, he might actually be more powerful than Ultraman even after he absorbs all this kryptonite. So Supergirl, Ultra Girl, and Superman Red pay a visit to the Red King at the Hellfire Club headquarters in New York City, where they explain the situation, and the Red King wants to help. But so here's the thing is because he has the infinity gems, he's wearing them on rings on his fingers. And because the infinity gauntlet, it hasn't like been invented yet, basically, but the infinity stones had existed for millions of years or whatever. So at any rate, the thing about the infinity gems is that if you go to another dimension, they lose their power. And in a previous timeline in our role-playing game that got changed because of time travelers, that ultimately is what brings an end to the Red King having the infinity gems, was they all went dark. They all turned like gray and they were just dead and they did nothing anymore. And it was because of dimension travel stuff where another character used a dimension travel ability called banishment to send him to another world. He used the infinity gems to come back, but that kind of started a timer. We're just, every day they kind of were losing another hit point, that kind of idea. So he's keenly aware of this fact, right? And so when they're like, we need you to go to this alternate dimension and rescue the Justice League, he's like, I can't, right? And he doesn't want to reveal too much about what's really going on because how do I want to put this? Sorry, I don't know how to explain this idea. He thinks that because he's had these little glimpses of the future, and there are possible future scenarios where the heroes of Earth K gang up on him. And it's not that he can't beat them, it's that he's trying to be friends with them, right? And he doesn't want friends to become enemies. But then the irony is like by saying I can't help you, right? That's making the heroes mad and kind of seeing him as like an enemy because it's like, why wouldn't you go rescue the Justice League? What's wrong with you? And by the way, we're also seeing the contrast between because like we said, there's this duplicator ray thing that happened at the end of World War II. And so like Superman Red and the Red King used to be the same guy. Now they're different guys. And because they've had such different experiences, because for instance, the Red King tends to surround himself with villains, basically, right? Who are rubbing off on him. We see these two, kind of butting heads. So Superman Red tells him this, basically says, I don't really know what the deal is with this Hellfire Club that you've been doing, but it seems like it's bad. And so Superman Red, who, if anything, has actually become more heroic since World War II, Superman Red tells the Red King, you need to just walk away from this. Like, I don't know what you're getting out of this, but you need to leave. And you need to, like, get your head on straight. And one of the things the Red King did was he used the mind gem to sort of become smarter, you know, um, not wiser. There actually is no wisdom attribute DC heroes. But in terms of his IQ, that is higher than it was before. And so he's kind of seeing Superman Red as sort of like dumb and like you don't know what you're talking about, that kind of thing. I feel like I've talked that part of it to death. Meanwhile, back in the negative universe, so the rebels break into Owlman's Airy, and it is the negative universe's equivalent of the Batcave. Here, they find a bunch of trophies that Owlman kept from over the years. One is the suit that kept Dr. Victor Freeze alive, as well as his freeze ray. Officer Snart grabs the gun, saying they might need it. They use Owlman's transporter pad, which beams them to the CSA's Panopticon on the moon. Winslow Shot subs an Omni gadget for a bomb that they then beam from the Panopticon to Ultraman's Arctic fortress. And after they've left, the bomb goes off, taking out the transporters in the CSA's headquarters and destroying any evidence that they were ever there. The rebels accomplish several things in the fortress. Okay, so they revive the Bizarro Ultraman, created when Ultraman was still just Ultra Boy. They use Professor Dalton's duplicator ray, which created the original Bizarro Ultraman, to create an army of Bizarro Ultramen. And with the help of the original Bizarro Ultraman, they revive Brainiac, who is a synthetic bioorganic being from another planet who was defeated by Ultraman years earlier. Last but not least, they steal the retro futuristic rocket that brought Ultraman to Earth. They escape, and Brainiac says this was too easy. Why haven't they been caught? Where's Ultraman? So meanwhile, back on Earth K, Ultraman is there now, and he tracks down his cousin, Ultra Girl, who is still at the Hellfire Club talking to the Red King. Ultraman tries to beat Kara again for not bringing him the kryptonite he asked for, but of course, the Red King doesn't allow this. And this is sort of a big moment kind of in the timeline of the Red King's life is the Red King rips out Ultraman's spine and beats him to death with it, which horrifies Supergirl and Ultra Girl, right? And Superman Red is not thrilled by this either, right? Because in a way he sees him like kind of like a brother figure, but in a way he sees him as his self. And that's pretty extreme. So Superman Red says enough and tries to stop him. And for a second, the Red King flashes a furious look at his more heroic counterpart. Superman Red says, "What's gotten into you?" and the Red King's glare fades, and he's not really sure what to say. He takes a step towards Ultra Girl, who had been hitting on him, right? But she takes a step away from him and is frightened of him after seeing what he can do. She is worried that he's basically just another Ultraman. Meanwhile, back in the negative universe, the rebels put the finishing touches on the suit of power armor that they built for Luthor using parts from Ultraman's red, blue, and gold rocket ship. Luthor leads the attack on the CSA, attacking Power Ring and knocking him out. The Bizarro Ultramen attack, and each one has a necklace with a number on it. They attack Superwoman and her maid men. And even when one of those characters can knock a Bizarro out, there's just tons of more Bizarros, that all have super speed, that all have a strength of 50, and they're just handing out naps left and right. Owlman 2, Richard Grayson, manages to get away and regroup, right? And so he promises to get back at this rebellion. After defeating the crime syndicate, Alexander Luthor dubs his team the Legion of Justice. And he says that the villains may return one day, but if they do, the Legion of Justice will be ready for them. Which brings us to the epilogue. So Superwoman is on the run from the bizarre Ultraman, which is kind of messed up since they all sort of look like Ultraman, and she hitched her wagon to him because at the end of the day, her whole motivation is that she wants to be on top. And since Ultraman seemed to be the most powerful being in her universe, that's why she was with him. But since he was killed by the Red King, now she's starting to think the Red King is probably the most powerful guy around. So between that and all these bizarre Ultramen trying to hunt her down, she decides it would be a good time to go lay low on Earth K. So she goes to Dr. Chaos, who is that world's version of Dr. Fate, and asks her to take her to Earth K. And as well as those who work for her. So Donna Troy, aka Olympia / Supergirl, Uncle Super, Mary Super, Captain Super, Captain Super Jr., all that stuff, along with Dr. Chaos, they all go to Earth K. So Diana, the evil Diana, goes to the Hellfire Club, and outside of the club, not out front where everybody sees her, but kind of off to the side, she spins, and we see that she can turn into an alter ego just like Wonder Woman could when she would spin and turn into Diana Prince. So at any rate, the villains from the negative universe in their alter egos enter the Hellfire Club, where, as per usual, people are partying. And it's worth noting, by the way, that the Hellfire Club has this alcohol that Howard Warnes thought up back when he was running some adventures in 1996. The alcohol is technically a gadget, like on paper, in terms of it is a thing that does a thing, but it has the neutralize power. But that power only works on systemic antidote. So the whole point of this stuff is that it lets supers get drunk who normally would be unable to get drunk, right? So anyways, they're serving this stuff here, right? And so I almost called him the Hellfire King. The Red King is drinking this stuff and talking to some other people at the Hellfire Club. And he's talking about Ultra Girl's reaction to him. And he doesn't want to be that guy that she thinks he is, right? And so at any rate, the villains from the negative universe hear this. So when the Red King finally goes to bed, drunk, the evil Diana follows him. And once he's asleep, she um uses the lasso on him. She wraps it around his ankle. And that's a problem because the lasso has the control power, right? So, to use Wonder Woman as an example, she can lasso a crook and order him to tell her the truth, right? We've seen that a million times. But also over the years, we've seen sometimes where she will lasso a crook and then order him to like go to the nearest police station and confess and turn himself in and stuff like that. So now Superwoman, the evil Wonder Woman, has the lasso around the most powerful being in her game world, the guy with the Infinity Gems, which seems like a good stopping point. So we enjoyed this one. We thought it was really interesting. We hope that you liked it too. If so, as always, smash the like button, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell, and leave us a comment. From all of us here at the longest running superhero RPG on Earth, we hope all of you guys have a great week, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.